Welcome inside the Bigfoot Beverages Studios. Ryan Milano joined with a guest, Max Torres of Ducks Digest, talking some Oregon recruiting. Max, thanks for taking some time away once again.
No problem, Ryan. Always glad to be here. Thanks for having me back.
So, two back-to-back road games for Oregon. Obviously, the Ducks aren't able to host any recruits. So, what's going on behind the scenes for Oregon in terms of their recruiting efforts?
Yeah, behind the scenes right now, I think that the name of the game, Ryan, is just planning ahead. You said it, another road game for Oregon, so not really, big weekend recruiting wise. But what they're trying to do right now is get ready for those upcoming games at home against Washington and Utah, and maybe even looking a little bit further into December with the early signing period looming. I know that they really just want to make the most of the rest of the season, their opportunities to get guys on campus. So I know that they're trying to get some of those priority targets back on campus for these last couple games with Washington and Utah, like I mentioned. So it's really just about planning and kind of lining everything up and then trying to really just make up ground or, lock down some of these guys before the early signing period in December.
Who are some of those targets that Oregon's trying to lock down?
Yeah, I know one guy who's been kind of in the headlines a little bit lately is Cole Martin. He's currently committed to Oregon, 2023 cornerback, son of Demetrius Martin, Oregon's quarterbacks coach. He's taken a couple trips out to Louisville this fall, so I think that's been one of the more interesting recruitments to follow for Oregon as far as guys that are currently committed to Oregon. We know that when guys are committed, it's not going to stop other schools from trying to sway them and maybe get them to switch things up. But Cole Martin's definitely a really electric defensive back. I love what he can do in the return game as well, has some added special teams value. But I know he's a big one that they want to keep in the fold in 2023. And then you want to try to, I think Oregon needs to get Mater Dei back out onto campus if they really want a shot there. I think that's more so looking like more so looking like an Ohio State versus USC battle for the top 5-star edge rusher from St. John Bosco in Bellflower. So I know he's a big one. And then they're also looking to get Dalen Austin, the LSU cornerback, back on campus for an official visit. That'll probably either be next week for the Washington game or the Utah game, I think. And then you also have Roderick Pleasant, who's an elite, speedy defensive back from Sarah Gardena in Southern California. So those are some of the guys that I think they're still working on and trying to see where they can work things out from a logistics standpoint and hopefully getting them back on campus.
You had the opportunity earlier this week to talk to a few guys from Mater Dei. Can you talk to me about who you talked to and what came out of those conversations?
Sure. Yeah, always a privilege to be able to go down to Mater Dei in Santa Ana. I mean, one of the things about living out here in Long Beach, just hit the road and get to, go to practice and just, a car's drive away from a lot of the best talent in the entire country. So got to talk to a trio of guys here that I can get into. Ryan, starting off with the quarterback position is always an interesting one, right? A lot of times that serves as the cornerstone or the headliner for a class. And Elijah Brown, the 2024 quarterback at Mater Dei, is just about as special as they come. He took recent visits to Penn State and Oregon. That was for the UCLA game when they had, just about 12 or 15 guys, all from Mater Dei, come up for that game. And Oregon's definitely in a really good spot here. It was his third trip to Eugene, so he's definitely familiar with it. Got to talk to Kenny Dillingham after the game, just talk some football and, just get to know him as a person a little bit more. He noted the progress of the offense has been something that's really encouraging. They're just getting better from week to week, and we all know the stat of 7 straight games of scoring 40 or more is awesome for recruiting efforts. Got some one-on-one time with Dan Lanning. Spoke to me about how he really likes the setting for football in Eugene. Just a lot of guys kind of talk about there's not that many distractions in Eugene. You go out there and you can kind of just handle your business and focus on football. So that's a huge plus for them with regard to recruiting Elijah Brown. Tons of Mater Dei connections all over the roster, and that really applies for all of these guys that we're going to be talking about. And then he also went out to Penn State, and they had a kind of a crazy game against Ohio State. But Penn State's also kind of entering the picture. Doesn't know as much about the Nittany Lions program, so maybe a little bit of a newer relationship there, but those are some big trips for him. And then I wanted to switch it up and talk about Aiden Breland because he is an absolutely elite pass rusher, defensive lineman here for Oregon that they're targeting in the 2024 class. All of these guys are 2024, Ryan, which is kind of interesting. Definitely not a senior-heavy class for Oregon, for Mater Dei in terms of, big-time recruits on the roster, a lot of 24s, even 25s making some noise. But Aiden Breland's a really big target for them, 6'5", right around 285, 290, top 10 prospect in California. He was also there for the Oregon game. And he really liked the coaching staff. Once he said right off the bat, the coaching staff was a huge hit with him. His favorite part of the visit was spending time with the coaches. You got Dan Lanning, Tosh McCoy, Tony Tuioti. He called them the triple-headed dragon and says that, they have all the development and all of the, previous experience that you could need, from a developmental standpoint to kind of get to that next level in his game. So Aiden Breland's another big name. He's heading to Georgia this weekend for their big game against Tennessee, and then he might head to Tennessee next weekend. So he's going to be super busy on the recruiting trail. Also had recent stops at Texas A&M. We know how they signed that historic 2022 class that was headlined by 3 or 4, it felt like, 5-star defensive linemen. He also went out to Oklahoma, so Brent Venables and the Sooners are doing a pretty good job on the recruiting trail as well. So Ducks are in another really good spot with Aiden Breland, and I know he's one of their top targets on the D-line for 2024. And then last but certainly not least, Ryan, I want to talk about Nate Frazier. He's a 2024 running back at Mater Dei, and he is electric. It's hard to find a weakness in his game. He's super shifty, short area burst kind of guy, but he can also have that home run speed, catch the ball out of the backfield. He does a little bit of everything for Mater Dei, but he's a little bit of a newer recruitment as far as his buzz nationally, but two schools that are very, very, heavily recruiting him. You have Oregon and you have Washington. So kind of a cool little start with this recruitment with the rivalry. We have that game next week. But he just loved everything about that Oregon visit. I mean, he could not find enough good things to say about it. Spoke really highly of his relationship with Carlos Laughlin, and that's going to be important for him because he really wants to have a tight-knit relationship with his position coach. And, Laughlin sending him his morning motivational texts or, Bible verses. So that seems like that's really been a plus for him. And he also went out to Washington aside from that Oregon visit. So he's getting out in the trail, and you have some new schools that are probably coming into the fray here. I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the top running backs in the class. And then you have USC, Tennessee also extending scholarship offers. So Oregon's doing a lot of really good work on the recruiting trail, and it's really hard to overstate the importance of that visit weekend with UCLA when you're able to have this many kids from one school that happens to be the best school in the country according to Max Preps rankings, national number 1. It's a huge, huge deal, and Oregon did themselves a tremendous favor, on the recruiting trail by just knocking it out of the park with these 3 guys, and I'm sure, a couple more as well.
Max Torres of Ducks Digest joining us in the Oregon Man Clicks hotline. Max, it seems like things are continuously heating up in terms of the recruiting efforts. What are some of those major deadlines that are coming up in recruiting as, we keep moving forward throughout the year?
Yeah, I think the first one to look at right now is really the early signing period in December. I think I'm seeing it right now. It looks like December 15th, December 16th. Trying to get a concrete date for that, so apologies for not having that. But middle of the month in December is really where things are going to be ramping up. So not only do you have things really getting crazy on the field with, some of these teams trying to, solidify their college football playoff resumes, get bowl eligibility, what have you. But while all that's going on, Ryan, you have these schools, these staffs that are just battling down to the wire, some cases in the 11th hour here, trying to get guys to come on visits. The visits just become more and more crucial, I think. Not everybody is signing in the early signing period. During the early signing period, that's important to know. But that's really become the norm. I'd say around maybe even north of 70% of the top recruits now in this 2023 class are probably expected to sign during that early signing period because they want to enroll early at the school of their choice. So that's really the biggest deadline that we're looking at right now when it comes to recruiting. And, we might even see a handful of guys that want to push the envelope a little bit and go past those traditional recruiting deadlines like we saw with Josh Connerly. I know that Roger Pleasant, that DB I mentioned earlier out of Sarah, he's probably going to be one of those guys that does that, seeing that he won't be in early, and he wants to have a senior track season. And, man, he's one of the best in the entire country.
Well, Max, before we let you go, let the listeners know where they can find you and your work.
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter. That's where I have my most frequent and, quickest updates. At Torres Sports is where you can find me there, posting all of my written content, covering the Ducks on the football field, basketball court a little bit coming up, and the recruiting trail. DucksDigest.com is my website that you can find me at. You can find me on YouTube at Oregon Football Max Torres, and then you can listen to me on the Ducks Dish podcast, available on your podcasting platform of choice.
Thank you, Max. Always appreciate it.
Thanks for the time, Ryan.